Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Sunday Musicians Café. I'm Pietro, an Italian violinist and founder of this podcast. First of all, thank you so much for watching, and if this is the first time for you watching the podcast, a really quick explanation. So this project is started in May last year, and it's a very informal chat between friends and musicians, and is trying to answer. The idea came from that annoying questions that we are trying always to answer as musicians, how musicians make a living. And it's annoying because sometimes we see that people don't understand how music can be a job, but at the same time I realized soon by myself as well that I was struggling to answer that question because we don't actually know how to explain that music has different ways of interpretation, obviously, but also different ways of being involved with the music industry, right? So today is our 31st episode. I'm really excited to introduce you to a fantastic luthier, Paris Andrew. She's a British luthier based in Florence, and she is the founder of womeninlutherie, which is a really interesting initiative I want to talk about. And I hope she's going to tell us more about it and all the future projects around that. But in general, about how what it means to be a woman in a male-dominated job as being luthier, obviously. And she went straight to Italy. But let's invite her to have this chat. I hope you're having a nice Sunday, by the way, and chilling. Let's see if she joins. Hey!
Hello. Can you see me okay?
Yes, fantastic. Can you see me and hear me well?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Where are you? In Florence?
I'm in Florence in my kitchen. It's a
Fantastic.
beautiful day. It's so sunny.
Oh, I'm so sorry to keep you doing this in a beautiful
No, if
day.
I wasn't here, I'd be in the workshop working. So
I see. Are you a tea person as a British you are yourself? I guess you're having tea.
no, I'm a coffee person. I've always been coffee. It's one of the reasons I moved to Italy.
Unbelievable, fantastic. You see, this is a fun fact. I am Italian based in England, and you're English based in Italy.
Yeah, we did a swap over.
That's really good. Okay, so I was introducing you very quickly, just before 1 minute, but I wish you can tell us more about why you moved to Italy, first of all, and why you choose to be a luthier. It's such a difficult job.
Well, I wanted to become a luthier because first I was a violinist. So a lot of us end up in this field because we play instruments first. I played the violin since I was 4, but I did not want to be a musician because I'm terrified of playing in front of other people. So that was not going to work. But I've always been very manual. I've always done lots of arts, crafts. I've got a really artistic family. I also enjoy working in the gardening. So I preferred to do a more manual work. So when I went to a luthier when I was 16 and I saw them doing the repairs, the restoration, I thought, this is what I want to do. And so I started with a harpsichord restorer. I was doing harpsichord first, actually. I was an apprentice. And then I got into the luthiery school in London, and then new instruments, repair, restoration. And then afterwards, I was actually working in London doing a lot of repair. And then I thought, I really want to visit the home of luthier. I want to see the true Italian style, the Cremonese style, the Tuscan style of luthier. So I decided to come to Italy for 2 weeks. I would bring my own violin to work alongside them so I could see how they were making the technique and the style and everything else. And then I stayed. This was before Brexit. So I just stayed. I gave up my flat, my business in England, and I packed a massive suitcase and I moved permanently to Italy, which would be about 6-7 years ago now.
Wow. Basically, you got trapped. You got trapped by the beauty of Italy, I
Yeah.
guess.
Also, Florence is so beautiful. It was really hard not to fall in love with the style of life
Yeah.
here in Florence. So it was a bit of a no-brainer being young with no mortgage, anything else. I thought, I'm going to move to Italy. Why not?
This is fantastic story, and it's like I guess it's really rare to see how someone. I mean, because it happened to me as well, but people in general find it very interesting to see that your passion, that when you were a teenager, you keep going, right, and you were like strong into it and led by the passion, and this is fantastic, and this is really good. So first of all, thank you so much for joining us today, and I'm really excited because you've been featured by the Strad, and you are the founder of Women in Lutherie, which
I'm one of
is
the
tell us more about it.
I'm one of the main organisers. I've been there since the very beginning, since the very first meeting. It was born from an idea of Jennifer Predick in America with the Violin Association.
Okay.
And the idea was to bring women together, initially just as like a Zoom social. And from that, we just saw how many incredible women around the world, not just violin world, it's guitars,
Yeah.
ukulele, oud, anything, technicians, repairers, any woman who is at the bench putting their hands on a musical instrument is a woman in lutherie. And we saw there was so much power in this group of women together. There was so much potential to do something really amazing where we could actually work together. We could develop things together. And so I came on board as one of the organisers, and we have a really strong volunteer community team. And we have our own conference, we have our own fellowship, which really is the highlight of the year, building fellowships between these really talented younger women and women who are at the beginning of their journeys and their careers with mentors amongst women, where we have a safe environment, a supportive environment where women can work together safely in a really happy, joyous way. I mean, there's so much joy in being able to work together. It's really special.
It's very clever, and I can see that it's going to be even more. How would you say, like spread in the world, obviously, because obviously, I mean, you can see that this specific craft, which is lutherie, it's very traditional itself as a job itself, and to be a woman in that job is clearly an innovation itself. So I think it's really important that we see that there are people like you in trying to create communities in a positive way. And not, I don't like the usual, idea of men against women, which is really wrong in my opinion. But it's community support, which is totally a different way of approaching this issue. Yes. And do you have any anecdotes or maybe fun one, not the bad ones, let's say, where you saw this issue of being a woman in lutherie?
I think it's a tricky one on lots of levels, and the idea is eventually we'll stop being women in lutherie. I don't want to be a woman luthier. I just want to be a luthier. I don't want that people think of me first as a woman and a luthier second. I should just be a luthier and do my work without my gender being taken into consideration. I think one of the reasons that I really push on my Instagram is trying to be very visible, not just as a woman doing my job, but a very feminine woman doing my job, which has been a lot of pushback against that.
I love that. I love that. I love that.
I think as well, being very, very feminine presenting, lots of lipstick, high heels, everything else, that again has been a bit of a point of contention in some circles, which has been more of an old boys club. I'm not the sort of face they want walking into the room to put my hands on a Stradivari. But that's the fun of it. That's the challenge of it. And it almost makes me want to go further. So if when I do Cremona de Fiera, I'm going to wear something neon pink, high heels, just to prove a point.
Tell us about that. It's so innovative. I saw the video obviously on Instagram, and people, if you didn't see it, please do, because it's going to be a shock most probably. But it's a positive one. I promise you. The pink pink violin. Yes, tell us about that.
Pink violin, that people hated it. Other luthiers hated it, and it's one of the reasons I enjoyed that commission so much. It was commissioned by an American drag queen who's also a concert violinist. We had a soloist who works with, the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, lots of major orchestras on tour. But obviously, this performer needed a violin that's going to match the costume and the wig and the hair. So I thought, well, there's no reason that I can't make a violin in the traditional Cremini style. It was the top quality tone wood. I made it completely with hand tools in the traditional style. The only thing that was different is that I added a pink pigment into the traditional oil varnish. There's technically nothing different between that pink violin and any other fine modern violin, apart from one pigment. But people went crazy. They were not willing to accept something aesthetically different, especially neon pink, which for me, I really enjoyed it so much, mainly just to sort of make people angry. But there's no reason we can't challenge every now and then. I make so many traditional, Gabriele model violins, lightly antiques that go all over the world. They're just normal classical violins. Why can't I once or twice a year make something wild? I think there's a lot of weight in tradition, and tradition is very precious, and I'm very honored to be part of the long tradition of luthiery as a hand tool skill. I mean, this is information and knowledge that's very valuable, that's been passed down for hundreds of years, and I am honored to be part of that tradition, continuing that craft. But I feel like there's no reason where occasionally we can't just challenge a little bit the idea of the aesthetics, because it doesn't change the sound, it doesn't change the playability. But it just challenges the idea of what a violin could be and what a performer could be, breaking away from the idea of this, conformity in what a soloist should look like, how they should dress, how they should behave. Why can't a soloist break free and do something a little bit more controversial? Also exploring playing more popular music on the violin without being considered, they've sold out. These things are a little crazy to me. There is room for us to move with the times and still honor tradition, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And I think innovation is part of, is one of the symptoms of creativity, and so you can see creative people are very, very often innovative in their ideas. Yes. So I absolutely agree. I have so many questions as a violinist, obviously. I have so many questions about specific, how do you make a violin? Yeah. But I will limit myself on a couple of them. So, for example, the fact that many people don't know, but the fact that the violin didn't change the shape in 300 years, basically. So, and still today, correct me if I'm wrong, so I want to hear your opinion as well. Still today, the best option, the best shape possible for the violin is that one. Is it that right?
Pretty much, yeah. There have been people who've experimented in the past. There was an Italian maker about 100 years ago who's doing a lot of experiments with the form of the violin. But at the end of the day, what we have, the standardized modern violin, works. It works perfectly. It sounds fantastic. Structurally, it's perfect. The way that the sound holes are positioned, everything else. I mean, it's such an optimal design.
But it's so genius. How someone can come with that idea? It's impossible.
With experimentation, nobody woke up one morning and just made the violin. I mean, even Stradivari, when you go to the museum in Cremona, you can see in all of his old tools that he made various forms. I mean, he made the cornerless violin that was potentially not a violin at the beginning, but became one. And on some of these forms and models was written good or not good, because he was experimenting, he was trialing. Before the violin, we had, the viella, we had the viola da gamba. It was a very gradual evolution until we arrived at this incredible form that just works so well. And now with standardization for violin, at least viola's a little different. We just have the set measurements for the vibrating string length, neck length, everything. We're really stuck in these measurements. But it's also important because a violinist needs to be able to pick up any violin and just immediately play it. You can't have it where they're going to have to try and adapt and adjust and figure out where everything is on every new violin. So I think that is very important.
But when you were telling about Stradivari, I immediately thought, you see, the guy was innovative. So he was doing experimentation. The guy was really creative, yes. And so what we call tradition actually was not in the past. So you see what I mean? So it's clearly a pattern that repeats. That's really interesting. And what about the varnishes? So the varnishes, for example, I know, and that struck me quite a lot, the fact that many Stradivarius, they don't have original varnish. So, or many good instruments in general, not just the Stradivarius.
Yeah.
Sometimes they've been, re-varnished and repainted and stuff. So it's interesting to me how someone can also think about, like, just take it out and put it
Yeah.
again.
No, a
It's
lot of
crazy.
the original instruments, obviously, a lot of the very old precious instruments, some of them, very little of the original remains. I mean, a lot of them, they were Baroque, and then they had the necks ripped out and the bass bars changed, the upper blocks changed. And then with just repair and restoration over the years, they've been through so much. There's been so much new wood added. There's been a lot of bad restorations that in the past where people were less careful about sympathetic restoration, 100 odd years ago, if something needed to be repaired, they often didn't care about just ripping parts off and replacing them. They didn't think, no, we need to figure out a way to restore this, to, protect as much as we can of the original. But I mean, so many of them have been through so many lives, so many pairs of hands. With technology now, at least we can see, we have so much technology to analyze the varnish, what's original, what's been changed, what's oxidized, Also, we can see sort of a little bit more what they've been through. But varnish is a very, it's a very, it's a tricky point amongst luthiers because it's one of those things where there's so many recipes, there's so many ideas, there's oil varnish works, there's alcohol varnish. There's a million and one ideas around varnish and which is authentic and which is not authentic, which is works best. Everyone's got their own ideas, and a lot of luthiers I know are still searching for that perfect varnish.
Do you have your own secret recipe for your varnish? Or no?
No, but I don't have secrets in general. I really hate this. I don't like this idea of secrets. There's a luthier in Italy who buys some natural pigments from the same chemist in town that I buy from. And when he was talking to the chemist, he's a violin maker, he was saying, I have a secret recipe for my varnish and I won't even tell my son, who is also a violin maker. I will die with my recipe. I'll never even tell my own son.
Wow.
It's a little ridiculous. I think there's no harm in sharing. If I share information, even if I tell people my exact process, if I show them my exact process, we have different hands, we have different eyes. It will never come exactly the same. If I share information, there's no risk that someone's going to magically copy me or beat me, or I think it's a little ridiculous. I think this gatekeeping is just preventing younger luthiers and luthiers who are beginning their journey from improving with no real reason. I think it's ridiculous. We should do more.
Yeah, I have to say I partially agree with you, and in the sense that I felt the same, for example, in the violin playing, yes, and the professors, teachers, they have this kind of, we still have this, I mean, nowadays much less, obviously back in the days was more the case, to have professor which wouldn't share their secret fingerings, for example, or, these kind of things. And I think nowadays is much less, but I see the point of it, because in a way there are things that objectively, according to the taste of people, they change. Yes, so the taste of the people changes in the history, obviously, and your research, your personal research on fingering, for example, or a specific feature that might appeal to them because them, how the society works today, so you want to keep it like, I did my research, I did my job, so you want to keep it for yourself. But I think the majority of the cases is just marketing. It's basically marketing. So just saying it's secret, you would attract people, even though there is no secret,
There's still, a lot of marketing, especially in Italy, is basically still stuck around the idea of the older man in an apron working by candlelight with all his secrets and his secret wood supply and his secret varnish and all of these weird, mysterious things that he knows. And a lot of that is just marketing.
You don't work by
the varnish.
Like,
I've seen a lot of these people who've banged on about their sort of secret methods. buying pre-made varnish. So I think a lot of that's marketing, but I don't know. I think, you know, there's sometimes this idea of I had to struggle to make it to where I am. I had to fight for the information. I had to fight for the opportunities. So why shouldn't you? And that's what I really, really dislike. I think that's a really toxic way of thinking. I think, okay, well, you had to struggle. You had to fight for the information, fight for the opportunities, fight to make your career. Why should the next generation have to fight? I mean, if we have information that's valuable and useful, surely we should be helping them. They're not competitors. I mean, even if they were competitors, again, the market is international. I mean, there's no way if I support a younger woman at the bench and give her information and advice, she's going to steal my clients. You know, that's not really how it works. So there's no reason not to share. Also, because I would have loved to have had more mentors and more people sharing with me and supporting me when I was starting out, rather than having to try and figure it out more by myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I agree with you 100%, specific on the fact that sharing allows also on a like you said, economical point of view. I mean, it allows the market to grow. It's the opposite. Yeah. And actually, one of the first thing, one of the ideas that pushed me to do this podcast was exactly that. So I want people to share their lives and to share their way of practicing. You know, some people are not, they don't agree. They are still like, no, I'm not for this kind of content and stuff. But other people, they say, yeah, I want to talk about this. And, you know, and it makes me so happy because you see, not only me learning, but I give it to everybody. So, and the more information we have, sometimes it can be also dangerous to have too much information, obviously. But if you have the right tools to take them, obviously it's good. It's good because you have more inspirations, yeah. So, but you were talking about this, and obviously it's linked with what you're doing, like the community of women in luthiering. And I mean that is clearly, you know, it's always the same person. It's you that you're doing that, and it comes clear to my mind. But I was thinking, not only the varnish sometimes is from other people on each instrument, yes, of all the instruments, but also the instrument itself. Sometimes it's made of 2 or 3 pieces from other luthiers. So I don't know if you ever thought about doing that on purpose instead of just a reparation. You know what I mean?
We actually have a violin here that was started by a young woman who came to work with me a couple of years ago. And it's the woman's violin. So basically, every woman who comes here to work, I had a young woman here last week who was wonderful. She did some work on it. So one by one, every woman who comes here gets to do a little bit of work on it. And by the time it's finished, it'll be a violin made by multiple women. With my own work, I did think about collaborating with other people to make a joint instrument. But I'm very... it's so difficult because everyone's got their own very specific personal style. And I have a very personal style on how I like things like the arching and the scroll and the sound holes. And I think I would find it quite difficult to see somebody else doing it for me, not because it was bad, just because it's not me. It's not mine. Every one of my violins, when I look at them, I can see my own hand. I can see me. I know that, you know, it's my style. It's recognizable. When I look at my scrolls lined up, even in an exhibition, even at stringers with other people's instruments, I can immediately see my own style and my own eye in the work. And it's the same with all of the luthiers. You can see their hand and their eye in their work. And that's what's so fascinating about luthiery, when we're not doing copies, when we're doing our own work.
Did you try to do copies? Have you ever tried? No.
It's never been particularly
appealing to you.
Interesting to me to make the exact copy. Also, I'm not sure that my antiquing skills would hold up to do a perfect exact copy. I think I would go a little bit insane. I like to work in a slightly more free way, so I work from models rather than exact models, and sometimes a little hybrid. So I can sometimes like modify the sound holes or add a scroll from one instrument to the body of another. Based on my own, not just personal taste, but also from years of listening to different models. Like I know my models. I have a few that I make consistently, and I know them like the back of my hand. I know which ones sound better, but then maybe which one has a more comfortable neck, or which one has a scroll that I think fits better amongst the same maker. And I like to give myself a little room for maneuver. But as far as commissions and clients have gone, I've never had so many requests or copies, mainly for antiques. Antiques instruments is so in demand these days, and I think it's so much fun because you get to let rip a little bit on the violin and start, all this time making a perfect violin and polishing the borders, then you're attacking it with seashells and khaki. It's weirdly cathartic, and I do enjoy it. But people want they want the look of the old instrument that has so much character. I mean, they're so beautiful to look at. They want that aesthetic, but without all the problems that come with owning an older instrument. They don't want to take it to a luthier every year because the neck's come unglued, and then the linings have come unglued, and there's a weird sound post crack, and then there's warping. An older instrument, they're so beautiful and they're so open, they can sound so amazing. But there's such a big investment over time, and a lot of musicians, I've had a lot of professionals from the Major Orchestra and from town who've been trading in their older instruments, looking for a modern instrument that looks old because they just don't want to live with the constant maintenance.
Yeah. Yes, I guess also I was thinking as you were talking, I think one of the first thing that a luthier, I was thinking like a young luthier now, what we can suggest to them, no? If someone wants to start to be a luthier, it might be very hard to find any inspiration out there because it's quite a difficult job. It's not very much displayed, and which links me to another thing that is social media. I want to talk about a bit, yeah. But so I was thinking, reparations and maintenance is basically the first thing you do, right? As a luthier.
It depends. I mean, before I was primarily actually in repair and restoration, but the last few years I've been focusing a lot more on new making. But it depends because I have a lot of restoration and repair clients coming in, so I tend to balance my time 50-50.
Okay.
But repair and restoration isn't something I advertise as much on the Instagram because all my repair clients are word of mouth. They know each other in orchestras and they'll come to me when they have a problem.
But when you start, when you start and you're very young, what do you think is the best way to approach luthiery? Like with reparations?
New instruments, because I think unless you really, really know how the instrument's made, and the best way to know how it's made is to make it. If you've made a couple of violins or a cello and you're really, really secure in your knowledge of the construction and how it works and how the tools work, after that, it's a lot easier to repair. These days, I mean, like apprenticeships are few and far between. It's very hard to get an apprenticeship. The route into luthiery these days tends to be school. So most countries have several schools. Newark in England is very prestigious. Mirka in France, very prestigious. Missenval, there's Cremona. In America, there's several. Most countries have a very good luthiery school, and that tends to be the way into the industry now rather than apprenticeships, unfortunately, which is a shame because I love apprenticeships. I think it's potentially the best way to learn to be a luthier, but it's just so difficult to find one now. So
I'm so biased, and I just realized this one because I'm Italian. I always think that Italy is the leading country for luthiery, but maybe it's not. What do you see? You see changes in the world, or what do you think is the leading?
Maybe I think it's
Italy.
Tricky. I mean, Italy's still the home. It's still the home of luthiery. I mean, a lot of the world's best makers are in Italy. The school is fantastic. There's a lot of luthiery schools here. We're producing a lot of very, very good new makers. So I think worldwide, Italy is still sort of the gold star standard of luthiery, but that's the Italian school, which in construction and style is different to the French and German and British schools. And I think, in England especially, I've seen a rise of a lot of really exceptional restorers coming through the schools and coming out of the schools. I mean, some really amazing work coming even from new graduates. But America has really, become a really big powerhouse for luthiery. There's a lot of very, very good luthiery schools in America, and there's a lot of American luthiers who are producing amazing work.
Yeah.
I think it's a weird one. I mean, you know, a lot of American luthiers would also do school in Cremona. So then it becomes a little tricky because then are they American luthiers or Italian luthiers, or are they Americans working in an Italian style?
Yeah.
I think, you know, the world has become, with the world being open now, you know, you can have incredible Korean luthiers who've studied and trained in Cremona, or, you know, amazing people from Africa who've trained in France. You know, it just, I think it's a tricky one, but I think generally Italy is still considered the gold star of violin making, and France is still considered the gold star of French making. I can't say whether it's true or not, but musicians tend to want to get an Italian instrument, and if it's got Cremona on the label, then you can add an extra 10 grand on the price.
Yes, absolutely. But I think we sometimes we are so biased. And the other day, I was I won't say the name of the house of auction, but I was trying instruments here in London, and I saw some so-called Italian instruments. They weren't that good, honestly. And I was trying other instruments, English, you know, and French instruments, and I was like, I prefer this one, even though the price might be, you know, because of the label, label. And I was like, I think this is just museum stuff, you know. It's not for us playing. Also, that's a very big difference, no? So sometimes, I mean, people, they ask me why the instrument is so expensive. Well, because nowadays it's also a part of collections. It becomes like a piece of art. So it's not just for playing. Sometimes it becomes just a collection, yes? So you have, and I tried myself, instruments which they were worth lots of money, and I wasn't comfortable. I was like, I don't play on this. I wouldn't play on this, and it would be uncomfortable for me to play on this one. And the sound, yes, of course, is interesting, but then maybe the balance on having a better timbre but more power, for example. You know, sometimes nowadays you have to play for 5,000 people, and you think, okay, but this instrument, even though it's such a good instrument, it doesn't sound, so people can't hear. So what do you think about this?
I mean, a lot of the instruments, if they're made by historic famous makers, you're paying because it's also an item of historical interest. And also a lot of people buy them as investment pieces, as part of a portfolio, and then release them to a foundation because they're going to turn a lovely tax-free profit in a few years. So, I mean, there's a lot of things to take into consideration with that. There's a very, very famous violin made by a very famous historical maker, which famously does not play. The musician was given it from a foundation as a prize, and they can't play it in concerts because it sounds so appalling. And they secretly play a more modern violin. I think it's tricky. I mean, every musician has their own personal taste, and I think never to have any assumptions when approaching looking for a new instrument. You know, I think if you're looking for a new instrument, you need to really close off any ideas that you've had previously about whether it's old, whether it's new, where it comes from. And I think you need to just try it and see if it matches you. Does it sound good? Is it comfortable? Without thinking about the name or the awards or what country they come from. Some of the most beautiful instruments I've made, you know, I've seen some new instruments being made in China, which are absolutely remarkable. I've seen older instruments from England, which are remarkable. You know, it's really hit and miss, but I've also seen, you know, award-winning modern instruments that you think, wow, this should be amazing, that sound appalling. Old instruments as well. I've also found there was an old like Stentor factory violin that was some sort of magic unicorn, and this Stentor was worth nothing. I mean, it was relatively old as well, and it sounded unbelievable. Nobody knows why. A dealer was showing it to me and played it, and this instrument stood its own up against a violin worth £100,000. And I don't know why. It was a fluke. Maybe the wood was better or the construction was better for a factory instrument worth £50, but this instrument sounded like it was unbelievable. So I think when choosing a new instrument, you really have to not think about name, country, age, and just think about how it feels for you. Because sometimes the best instrument's not necessarily what you think you're looking for. I've had professionals come here, and we've got older instruments. We've got instruments made by, you know, master makers in my shop who've made for
Okay.
30 odd years. And we've also got violins made by new graduates. And I've seen professionals fall in love with a violin made by a new graduate with 1 year of experience. And the aesthetics of the violin maybe aren't even perfect, but I see musicians play it and be like, this is the one. I love the sound. It's comfortable. It sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it depends
Yeah.
on so many factors, really, and it's really personal. That's why I think yeah, it's a tricky question. Just to quickly, I know you're very busy and you have to work on your violins, and we want to see more of them because I hope everybody's following you on Instagram because you do such a good job. I think this is the other big part of your life. Yes, social media. Social media is such a big part. Yes.
Yeah, no, it's huge. I actually gave up my website because
Oh,
in the end I was getting quite nobody through my website, and all of my clients that find me through Instagram. I
fantastic.
started it again because I wanted to push to be more visible as a woman, a younger woman, a very feminine presenting woman at the
Yeah.
bench, getting the work done. I wanted to say, look, you know, I can rough arch a cello with a gouge and a pair of heels. It's fine. A lot of other women do it too. A luthier doesn't necessarily look what you think they're gonna look like. But then from that, I started selling instruments. I started getting clients and dealers and exhibitions and opportunities, at which point I realized this is an incredibly valuable business
Yes.
tool and it's free. It just takes a lot of consistency.
Yes.
But I
Yes.
have fun with it. For me, you know, I like to show what I'm doing and a little bit of my life, and people seem to be responsive to it. So it's
No,
been fun.
I must say your content is fantastic. I love it, and
Thank
yeah,
you.
it's really well done. And people don't realize how much work actually is behind, because I am a bit into it somehow, but it's really tough. And I think, as you said, the consistency is really much one of the key elements for posting on social media. I know you're very busy, and always ask this at the end of the chat. If you can give us a tip or a suggestion in 1 minute about for the new generation, you know, and for you, luthier probably. So not just musicians. So if you want to give, like, you think there is a specific skill or specific thing that you think nowadays is very important.
I would say for musicians, check your bridge, because a lot of people don't check your bridge. Make sure that the bridge is positioned between the notches in in the sound holes. Make sure it's at 90 degrees with the fronts, because having the
Yes.
bridge in the right place is going to save you potential damage, and it's going to make the violin sound a lot better. For younger people thinking about getting into luthier, people thinking about going into luthier, I would say you have to have the confidence to knock on a lot of doors, find a good luthier school, but knock on doors, network, get to know luthiers around you, get to know luthiers internationally, and start building connections, because a lot of this world is built on connections and reputation. So you have to get the nerve up to just bang on doors, send some messages and introduce yourself. But anyone can make it in luthier. When I started, I'd never used a hand tool before, and with a little patience I got there. So anyone can do it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Paris. And if you're a
Thank
woman,
you.
obviously go to the
We're
community.
going to do
Yes, join the community of women in youthery. You still have like a new projects with the community and stuff with the foundation, yeah?
At the moment, we are just the fellowship applications will be closing at the end of this month. So
Okay.
it's not much time until the deadline to get the applications in.
So
And
hurry
yeah.
up, hurry up. Yes, yes, fantastic. When is the next gathering? You know already the dates, more or less?
No, but if they get in touch with Women in Lutherie on Instagram, I can give them all information on joining the private Facebook group and getting into the community.
Fantastic. This is wonderful. I really like supporting this project. I believe in it and I think it's really good. Thank you so much, Paris, for joining us.
Thank
And I
you.
hope to see you in Florence or in London.
Oh,
Come in
be
London.
wonderful. Yes.
See you, see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Bye
much.
bye. Fantastic. Wow, what a guest. I'm really excited and feel adrenaline is all over the place. You liked it, guys. I think it was incredible, wasn't it? I mean, she's not just incredible as a luthier, so in her craft, but also so inspiring and so innovative in the way of thinking, the way of presenting herself. if you see her social media, it's just unbelievable. I mean, it's fantastic, and he's a luthier. So she's doing one of the most traditional jobs in the music industry. So thank you so much for following. And if you didn't, if this was your first time watching the podcast, please do send any feedbacks or suggestions you want me to hear from you, and they are very helpful normally, and they help me to grow a lot. So this is a small project, but it can be much bigger with your help. And if you have any guests you want to hear from as well, please do send any names as a suggestion, and I will look at it. And I really like looking at your messages. Is this Sunday Musica? Yes, it's a regular thing. Hi, Paul Orialto. Yes, it's a regular thing every Sunday. There are some Sundays which I skip for professional reasons, or also to take just a day off. But it's a regular thing. This was the 31st episode, and I started in May last year. So pretty much all the weeks of the year I've been done, and I love it. I just love it, and I hope you like it as well. So please do follow to keep up with new content. I hope one day I'm going to make a new account, like a separate account for this project, so we have more guests and probably more content coming. Please do send any feedbacks, honestly. If you think I should improve in something, I really want to know. And yeah, see you next Sunday then. Bye.